Industry. All right, folks, we will do the best we can to give an update here. I want to welcome everyone on behalf of RIA and the IICRC to yet another very important update and briefing to the restoration industry. I'm going to turn over immediately here to Lee King, who is the current president of RIA, and I am going to have Lee make a very brief statement, and then we're going to jump right into today's COVID-19 update. Lee, go ahead.
Thank you all for participating in this extremely important discussion at a critical time in our industry. This is a time when we, as a unified industry, can demonstrate our professionalism in the field of restoration. When I look at the group of participants, it is amazing how we have collectively come together on very short notice and have combined our efforts to respond to such an enormous need. The contributors have worked on this days, nights, and weekends since we learned about the severity and impact of the coronavirus. I want to thank all of the RIA leaders who have constructed these industry briefings, and particular thanks to Mark Springer, RIA's president-elect, who will be taking over for me within the next month. Additionally, I want to thank Michael Pinto, chairman of RIA's Environmental Council, who continued to move this initiative forward into the wee hours of the mornings over the last 72 hours. Likewise, I want to thank the IICRC and its leaders. We are really grateful to them for the new partnership we reached last year. The recent developments in working on our response to COVID-19 perfectly models the collaborative spirit in which our agreement was structured. This is exactly what we had intended. I encourage all of those who are watching or listening to this briefing to listen, learn, participate, and contribute. This is likely the most critical challenge the restoration industry has ever faced, and we want to convey the highest levels of safety, client care, and professionalism on behalf of our industry. Thank you for being here today, and I will now turn it back over to Mark Springer.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate all that you do, and I want to be clear, there is so many people who've been involved with this, of course, as Lee has already said, very, very critical time. It's difficult to be able to recognize all the folks who've been involved in this very, very broad collaboration. So thank you to everyone who has done that. I want everyone to know that this call is being recorded, and I need to again emphasize, if you are on this call, please do not share video. Please mute yourself. Again, we did not have the ability to mute everyone. This call will be very disruptive if you are not muted. If you can't mute yourself, I will have to remove anyone where I do get audio, so I really don't want to do that. But I do want to start with Norris. Norris has been, of course, very involved in this effort. Norris is one of RIA's certified restorer instructors, and even though he doesn't like it when I call him an industry expert, he is an industry expert and has trained many in the industry in ICRA protocols and in advanced restoration techniques. Norris, again, thank you for being here today. The last briefing that we did had quite a following. We had over 2,000 views of the last one. Certainly, it's our hope that that information has been helpful to very, very many people here in the restoration industry. But it seems like it's been a lifetime ago, you know, since we had that last call 2 weeks ago. So much has changed. First question I have for you, Norris, is what do you see as some of the most profound changes, and how are you addressing those changes since we talked last to restorers?
Well, I mean, I think some of the most profound changes we're seeing all across the country are the shutdown of businesses and companies, and the self-isolation
great
space. That's huge. That has an impact on everything.
Okay, well, I'll call them tonight.
Again, folks, anyone who's not muted, you must mute yourself. Please mute yourself. If you're on this call and you're not muted, please mute yourself. Actually, I'm gonna do this. I might be able to mute.
Maybe you should go there too.
Probably. I'm trying to mute all, but that mute all button will not.
Almost in the industry here on this call.
Yeah,
listening to
that's
that is
true.
pretty
Oh,
profound.
boy.
I wish I could, for whatever reason, the mute all button. is not
Oh,
doing
good
it.
times.
All right, whoever just said good times, please mute yourself. Very important. I'm going to have to go through and find out who that is if we can't get these muted. Again, folks, I apologize for the extra audio there. Norris, appreciate your comment on that. And I wanted to ask you another question that has to do with, I think, something all restorers are concerned about right now. There was an article available. It's actually available online. Folks might be able actually to see it on my screen, which was an article in the Atlantic magazine that says, deep clean and clean again. And you were quoted in that, and you said that you were very concerned about, quote, fringe companies are just seeing the dollars and rushing after them, and I'm really concerned. And I think there's a lot of people on this call that are concerned about that. But I wanted to ask you about what are some of the things that you're specifically concerned about, and how why does this matter to the restorers that are credible and that are seeking to protect workers and the public?
Sure, and that I think is one of our big concerns, and has been one of my concerns, even with really credible restorers, to make sure we step back and approach this the correct way. It's amazing the things that people will post on social media. We've got folks who don't understand the products they're using, who are not properly donning PPE, so I'm sure they're not doffing it properly, and who are sure how poorly they did the job to be used against them later. Unfortunately, that gets a lot of traction with people that don't know any better.
Hey, Norris, I'm going to interrupt you for one. Norris, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. Go ahead, and if you can hear me, unmute yourself. You will have the ability. Actually, I can unmute you there. Okay, go ahead. You're back on.
I'll start again. So you didn't hear any of that?
We did. We only missed the last sentence. Go ahead.
Okay. So, that they're doing a great job of documenting the things that they're not doing properly for the attorneys to use against them later. And unfortunately, the general public who doesn't know any better is seeing that and is going to associate true professionals with that sort of bad business protocol.
Exactly. But so as restorers move forward, what are some of the challenges you think that they're going to face over just the next couple weeks? And if you were a restorer, again, one of the unique positions that you have is that you're not only now a trainer, you were a restorer, you own your own restoration company. If you were looking at these things, what would you be doing to prepare, and how would you be handling these things?
One of the big concerns that I have is a skill gap that is beginning to show up. As a restoration industry, we wear PPE often for things like mold remediation or sewage cleanup, but it's not really an infectious control environment. And consequently, we get sloppy with it because the risks aren't so high. And I think that we need to really identify the skill gaps that are out there and revisit that to properly approach donning and doffing PPE with checklists and with buddy systems in that contagious environment, completely different than the normal work that we do. And I would encourage them to take a look at some of the videos and training that have been done by reputable places like Johns Hopkins and the CDC during the Ebola outbreak. And make the appropriate adjustments. I was working with a company day before yesterday where we were doing some refresher on that. We had chocolate pudding on their PPE, and they had to get out of it without getting chocolate pudding on anything underneath. And even the sequence for removing the gloves, hand sanitation, going through the whole process. And it was extremely difficult for any of those. It was very slow, very cumbersome, and not skilled. It's something that has to be practiced and identified. And I'm concerned that we're going to put people out there assuming that they're comfortable with the PPE protocols for donning and doffing and working, and that they're going to not have those practice skills. That's one of the big concerns I have.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that I love. I know we talked about that pudding exercise. What a great way to be able to test what your capabilities are. I think that's very practical, and certainly something we've seen across really the breadth of the industry is how many restorers really are needing guidance and need to be able to get direction in this, because really in many ways it is such an unprecedented threat. And so what I think really is the substance here of what we want to talk about. And again, Norris, thank you for being here. We're going to continue talking with you as a subject matter expert as we continue to release this information through our organization to the general public. So thank you for that. But I want to transition now into Michael Pinto here. Michael, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. I want to thank Michael Pinto for his service through really what today is an unprecedented effort in the restoration industry, and that is to be able to provide a guidance document to the restoration industry. And folks, I cannot understate the frenzy of activity that has been undertaken over the past really 5 days to be able to provide a document to the restoration industry that will, again, help and provide guidance. Now, this, as we're going to talk this call, this document is not a be-all, end-all document. This is a document that is going to evolve, but we have to be able to help restorers and give them guidance so that we can be sure as an industry that we are not introducing a black eye to ourselves and doing things that are actually causing more harm than help. And so, Michael, go ahead, and I'd love for you just to talk about this document. Again, we've got limited time today, but introduce this document. I'm going to pull it up so people can see it. But Michael, go ahead and take it away here. And again, thank you for everything that you have done. I just want to confirm it. Graham, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that what says preliminary report? Can you see that, Graham? You guys can't see it? Okay. I will make sure that you guys can see that here in just a second. But go ahead and take it away, Michael, because it'll be up in just a sec.
Well, thank you, Mark. First of all, I just want to emphasize what you mentioned just a moment ago, is that this is not the end of the process. This is the beginning of the process. And they can see on the screen there, the title of it is Preliminary Report for Restoration Contractors Assisting Clients with COVID-19 Concerns. And that really is the case. It doesn't necessarily have to be actual documented cases. I mean, there's just concerns about what if we've had the general public in our building, and what if some of them were carriers. And the restoration industry has plenty of experience in terms of helping people during these crisis situations when things are very difficult, and it's our job to step up to this particular task. And so I'm pleased that everybody got together, and it clearly is an RIA and an IICRC joint project, and that just makes it even more valuable to the industry. The specifics, however, it's 10 pages, and I would just encourage everybody in the industry, particularly operations managers and owners and everything. It's a 30-minute read. It's written in compact and simple language that everybody can understand. It's got lots of information in there that you can share with your clients. It is broken into 12 sections. Obviously, owners, managers, the core executive staff of each restoration company should be looking at the entire document. But I think what's really important is at the center of it, sections, they're not numbered, but sections 7 through 10 are the 4 that really need to be shared with the entire staff that's going to be involved in some of these response actions. We talk about crew safety. We talk about cleaning of touch points or frequently touched surfaces, depending on which part of the country you come from. Applying of disinfectants, and then post-work evaluation. How is it that we help to determine that the task that we have undertaken have actually provided some value to the clients? And as you might expect, there's going to be a lot of different products and a lot of different procedures and equipment that restoration contractors have. We're not trying to be prescriptive in this document. We're not trying to tell them this one is the best, or you can't necessarily use existing products and services. What we're trying to do is give them a format so that everybody in the industry is starting and progressing down the same path.
Mm.
The last thing, I know we're short on time, but the last thing I would really emphasize is that even for the restoration contractors, this document is a starting point, not an ending point. So in there, for example, when it says cleaning touch points or frequently touched surfaces, we give some general examples of that. But it's important for each particular facility that you're going to go into to document what those touch points are, create a checklist for that project, give it to all of your workers and your supervisors so that you can ensure that those touch points are actually cleaned, because the document talks about cleaning touch points, not some of the touch points.
Excellent points. Again, we are short on time. I want everyone to know that not only is this broadcast being recorded and will be posted very quickly, but also this document will be available to the entire industry. This is not a document that you must be an RIA member for. We believe that the need for this document is really worldwide, and so it will be available. If not already, I will pull up our website in just a second. If it's not already, will be available very shortly for download. We believe it's really, really critical. Michael, thank you for your work. I also want to recognize a couple other people. There's, again, so many people that worked on such short notice to bring this that it would be impossible for us to recognize and note everyone, but certainly within RIA's group, Kent Rawhauser, I know, worked closely with you. Sean Silman worked closely with you on this. And I know that ServPro International, which is actually there from the corporate level, I believe, were some of kind of the initial driving forces. So we certainly want to thank all of you. I know that you were dealing with edits in a very gracious way in real time, around the clock. We've been having just an enormous amount of I think probably for a lot of us is the only thing we've thought about for about the last 72 hours. So thank you for your service to the industry in this, and this will be, again, the starting point of many discussions. Moving now to Brandon Burton. Brandon is the chair of standards at IICRC. Brandon and I have been on each other's speed dial for the last few days as we've worked through this process. And Brandon, I just want to again thank you. I want to thank Kevin Pearson. I want to thank Graham Dick, Mark Drozdov, Lee Center, were a lot of the folks that worked very closely with us. And I know there's a whole bunch more, right? I know we're only skimming the surface. I think it would have been impossible for us to have had this completed without really what was the starting point of this relationship last spring with our agreement. Kevin and Pete Duncanson worked with us on that, and of course Charles Isley as well. And I think it really facilitated this, but there's some really important distinctions that I would like you to speak about in this that are unique to a standard. And we want folks to understand this is not a COVID standard. A standards process is long and deliberate and certainly not applicable in this case. But I want you to talk about that and make sure you can kind of clarify that for the group here, and we'll spend just a few minutes there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, and I wanted to start just kind of tailing into the acknowledgments there. You know, as the standards chairman for ICRC over the last 12 to 18 months, I've gained a tremendous amount of respect for the amount of time and energy that goes into the effort to gain consensus on on any practice or procedure or guideline. When you bring together our industry and the expertise that exists in our industry with individuals like Norris and Michael and some of the others that are on this call, bringing that expertise together into a single mold, into a single set of guidance, it typically takes months, if not years, to collaborate on that information and bring it together into a single concise document. And what I witnessed over the last 2 or 3 days was that process abbreviated into literally days. And the amount of effort and energy that was applied to that by the number of individuals that are listed here in the acknowledgement section was amazing. I had not seen that occur at any point in my history in this industry. And I've been in the industry for about 25 years, been engaged in a lot of standards. But you're exactly right. It is important also to make the distinction that this document is not a standard. right? This is a report, as it is appropriately titled, as Michael shared earlier. It is a set of guidelines. It does have consensus, and it has been peer reviewed. And that's the critical element to this document. When we're in a situation like this, literally a pandemic that is affecting the entire world, not just our own local populations, you know, the speed at which we need to move to respond. I actually heard our local governor speak to this just the other day. Minutes matter, hours matter. The speed of that response. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with our industry. We're an emergency response industry. We understand the need for speed of response. And I want to be, you know, the first to tell you that the group that worked on this and participated in this all understood that, and their intent to bring this document to the industry as quickly as possible with good, solid guidance was really, it was something amazing to be a part of and to watch that unfold and watch it transpire. I also wanted to add to that, you know, the IICRC as a group is very proud of the collaboration that was done with the RIA explicitly in the development of the document. I think it really sets the stage for the industry to understand that the RIA and the IICRC are partners in their endeavor to help the industry move forward, not only with COVID-19, but with any of the endeavors that our industry needs to embrace and tackle from this point moving forward. And I hope this is great testament to that. And those that work with the IICRC and work with the RIA can understand moving forward that these two organizations are in partnership in bringing these types of solutions to the industry, because we are all vested in this industry moving forward. And then the last thing I was going to note is just as a note, the timing on this was quite interesting, because the IICRC does have an active consensus body that has just been established under the S410 for infection control. And the individuals that participated in this process, most of them came from that effort that is underway with the IICRC. So Graham Dick is the chair of the S410. Mark Drozdov, whom you'll also hear from today, as the vice chair of the S410. Also had a lot of involvement from Scott Armour, who was a part of our S520 standard document, and of course, Lee and myself. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Mark. Absolutely phenomenal opportunity to participate and just see the efforts from our industry to bring this forward.
Yeah, and I have people ask me about this all the time. It's almost like people want you to take sides, and I said, listen, these guys are our partners. And I mean, I can say, I know you and I were talking late into the night many times, and as was Kevin Pearson. I mean, Kevin, he's got his phone ringing off the hook with a million things all the time, and he's is super responsive, and we just so appreciate the working relationship that we're building and will continue to build with you all. So thank you for that. And with that, Graham and Mark, there, I know you guys already kind of raised your hands. First of all, thank you for what you do. We know firsthand how much work goes in behind the scenes. I think sometimes people, you know, see people's names out there and they think, oh, it must just be awesome to be, you know, be the chair of something like this. And they have no one will ever know, no one will ever appreciate. You'll never be thanked anywhere near what you should be for the countless hours that it takes behind the scenes to provide leadership in this industry. So thank you both for what you do. Mark, you and I had a chance to talk a little bit earlier, and I'd like you just to talk about some of your guys' priorities with 410 and explain what 410 is briefly. Again, we are pressed for time here because I think maybe some folks don't know what 410 is. And then, Graham, I think it's also really important for you just to emphasize what we talked about earlier on the phone, which was a lot of folks are jumping into trying to say, where can I be going out and doing COVID-19 work? And they're blowing way past, how do I protect my team in this environment? And you had some just really practical things you're doing. And so I thought maybe you could touch quickly on those, Mark. I wish we had an hour to sit here and talk about this. We will have in the future another briefing where we can talk for, you know, just about these issues. But you guys can just kind of hit some of those high points, being mindful of our timing here. Men, we'd sure appreciate that. And again, thank you for participating with us in this.
Sure thing. First of all, thank you, Brandon, giving that insight of what it takes to develop a standard. Over at IICRC, we're dealing with over 20 different standards. This is a new one, and I'm honored to work with Graham. Graham, you should say hi to everybody. But the fact is, it's a true consensus standard. where different industry stakeholders have a say. Every word gets vetted. We're in the process of assembling our consensus body. When we first were elected to these positions, this was way before COVID-19 scare. We are hoping to be ready with everybody's input to have a solid document that the industry can rely on.
Excellent. Mark, thank you for that. Graham, what do you have to add? And maybe, again, being mindful of time, kind of reiterate some of the things that I know because you're an operator like me, we're both operators. We're in the trenches. Talk about some of the just practical things that you're doing with your team to make sure that they're safe. Yep, hold on just a second, Graham. I'm going to unmute you. Okay.
Unmute
now
me.
we can hear you. Okay,
Am I
go ahead.
good?
Yep, you're good. Go for it, man.
All right. Thank you, Mark. We are very excited with this 410 project. It's a standard with a huge potential to impact and improve the health of people in all non-residential built environments. We've got a high horsepower CB coming together from healthcare, from stakeholders in every environment and operators. It's very exciting to be able to be the coach of that process. What you just described, what I don't see people talking about is really it starts with that risk assessment, hazard identification for every position in your company. And then what is the degree of risk? What are the chances of that person becoming exposed to that hazard? So we know about the airborne risk, we know about the touch risk. And as you go through from the administrator, from your receptionist, from your accountant, and where they work, how they are situated in your office, who's cleaning the bathrooms, the bathroom is a vector in your office. That's where to start, not how do we market our disinfection services. Sending teams out into the field. This isn't like a sewer backup. To our knowledge, no one has ever died of sewage remediation. But right now, globally, we're sitting at almost 4% mortality rate. Now, if you've got 100 employees in your company and they caught COVID-19, are you prepared to lose 4 of them? I heard of a company last week that sent a large team to a large site, and the number of people over 50 with pre-existing health conditions was making their health and safety officer tear their hair out. It's egregious. This is the kind of thing that we need to avoid because that's what's going to tarnish our industry. Look at the age and health pre-existing conditions of your employees before you send them to war. What are their activities? And you got to go through every activity from how they enter your building in the morning. Where do they go? Do they go directly to the sink and wash their hands? And then who's wiping down the touch surfaces in the office? Tailgate meetings, how do you do that? When they enter their vehicle or their personal vehicle or a company vehicle to travel to a site, what are they doing? For example, for us, we require now that they get into the vehicle, they grab the seatbelt, click it in, and then they grab a disinfecting wipe. They wipe the steering wheel, all touch points for operating the vehicle, and wipe the seatbelt. And then they grab another one, wipe their hands when they leave their vehicle. How do they approach the work site? These are the things even before you consider the actual work activity. And another aspect that is really critical, I don't hear enough about, is how are you communicating with your clients to explain your risk assessments and how this has changed your actions in practical ways to protect them and to protect yourselves. Because if your clients don't feel safe, they're not going to let you into their buildings to work. I've talked to cleaning companies where they're getting their cleaning. You'd think cleaning is essential service, especially at a time like this. And their customers are calling up and saying, no, we're not going to do any cleaning. We don't even want you in the building. And so now what? Restoration, same thing. And I believe a large part of that is because we have not taken real steps to do this risk assessment and then apply practical steps. How do we approach the building? How do we come into your home? How do we pass through your home to the work area of your home? What PPE are we going to wear? And then that may change based on the risk assessment of that activity. But what are you doing to really protect your customers, make them feel safe? Because if you can't fix that communication problem, you won't be working.
I think I totally agree with that. I think it's what I appreciate about what you and I talked about is that you hit right onto some of these areas. People are thinking about touch surfaces in their facilities, but it goes so far beyond that to the equipment that we're using, our vehicles that we're using, and then of course communicating with our customers about these changes. You know, when someone shows up at their house and doesn't shake their hand, or shows up in PPE, even for a standard water extraction and restorative drying project, that's a big shock. So communication is really critical in that. And to that end, Brandon, and thank you, Graham, appreciate you sharing those thoughts. Brandon, I wanted to go back to you because I know another area that RIA is unified with IICRC is in communication to the general public. IICRC is working on a PSA to general industry. This goes beyond just communication within the property restoration industry, but to general industry and the general public about these times that we're in and how first responders, which is what restorers are, impacted with this. Can you just give us a little preview on that and some timeline on that? Because I think that's going to be really important for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll make this very, very brief because I know we're running over. So we are working on information to help restoration and cleaning remediation contractors, because emergency business doesn't stop, right? Water damages, fire damages, et cetera, that's going to continue. And so mitigation, remediation, restoration will continue. So how you're not necessarily doing a COVID-19 cleanup project, just doing your daily work and continuing to mitigate property loss in general. How do we go about that business and still sustain ourselves and protect our workers and those that we work for? So we are working on some of those guidelines as well. And right now I'm targeting having that out very early next week as we go through the process of finalizing that statement. And it's something we'll make sure is available through both the RIA and the IICRC.
Excellent. Well, that's great. Brandon, thank you. I know we could spend a lot more time on all these topics. Mark and Graham, thank you for your efforts. Michael, again, and the entire Environmental Council. I mean, you can see on this document that there's just an enormous amount of folks who were involved in that. So thank you to everyone. Norris, thank you for joining us today. I want to let folks know, even though we had 30 minutes scheduled for this call, we are going to have some Q&A with some restoration industry media. And so we will be doing that here in just a second. Before we get into that, of course, one of the major challenges with this event has been the rescheduling of the events that were already planned. We were so excited to have a great conference in New Orleans. And of course, I think everyone knows that the event scheduled for April 14th to 16th in New Orleans has now been rescheduled. We are working actively on a new date and possibly a new location for that will be in 2020. So look for that information. However, that being said, we had so many important messages that need to be shared with restorers that we just said we can't not have this communication. And so there will be a virtual conference that will happen on April 2nd at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Mark your calendars for that. Anyone who was registered for the RIA conference will get free admission to that item or to that event that we have. And you'll still be able to go to the event that will be later in the year as well. If you're not registered yet, you will be able to go to that free and participate. We will be having our town hall where we will be speaking about some of the important strides that the AGA has been making, especially in the area of estimating and a lot of other updates around RIA's strategic goals. And additionally, we will be providing more sessions that deal specifically with COVID-19 and many of the experts in the industry. So it will be about a 4-hour virtual conference. Be looking for information on that. One last thing that I'm going to pull up here. Sorry, I got to like start and stop on this here. Going back to the, actually, I guess I can still just keep it right here on this one. Sorry, folks. I want to point out that I have, oh, there we go. I want to point out, Norris pointed this out to me and I kind of chuckled because I pointed out the same thing to him the other day. This is not proper PPE donning here. The mask, your full face respirator should not be outside of your PPE. I want to thank my assistant, Grace, who put this lovely screen shot together. Grace is not a remediator, and we just wanted to point out that is not a proper PPE donning. One last thing that I also want to point out here for anyone on here who can use the document that we've already referenced is that if you go to RIA's website and you go then to resources and click COVID-19 resources, you can click right here to get to the document that we referenced. It is available. Please go there and check that out. One other thing that you can go to if you're interested is, of course, updates on our events. More information about the virtual conference will be there. And of course, if you're interested in advocacy, a whole bunch of resources around advocacy there as well. So with that now being said, I want to make available to, I believe that anyone here from the Restoration Media, I think we have Jeff Cross, we've got Michelle Blevins, I know at a minimum. Anyone else from Restoration Media who's been invited, go ahead and unmute yourselves. We're just going to open for a few questions, if there is any, and we'll try to keep this relatively brief and also as civil as possible as well. So anyone who would like to participate in that, please feel free to ask those questions now.
This is Jeff. I have a question.
Jeff, go ahead. Jeff Cross from Clean Facts. Go ahead.
So this document is going to be updated frequently, it sounds like. How will you inform the industry of that? Are you going to gate it or send out notifications?
Yes, we will. Excellent question, Jeff, and I'll just address that very quickly. We are forming a task force between RIA and ICRC where there will be representation to update this document with, of course, the very quick changes that we see in our industry. We have to adapt to those. We will be hosting briefings potentially as regularly as weekly. Those will also go out on social and through email as well. But absolutely, this is a living document.
Okay, that's cool. I'm sorry I couldn't read it completely before this call, but
not
has much time.
Excellent question.
So, do you think there'll be additional documents like step-by-step procedures added? Is there going to be a plan for that?
You know, I'm going to let one of the other guys, maybe I'll have, first of all, have Norris tackle that. I don't anticipate that there will be a step-by-step because of the nature of what we have. It's so specific to the sites that we work in, Jeff, but I'm going to let Norris tackle that, and then maybe we'll jump over to Mark or Graham to make a few comments. But guys, please try to be brief.
Yeah, this is a guidance document, and just like everything else, we have to apply our professional knowledge and judgment to the site conditions that are unique to that specific project. So the idea is to give you a baseline to work from to make those decisions.
Excellent. Mark, any comments from you?
This is an ever-evolving thing. What we know today may be very well be changed tomorrow. So it is a living document, and everybody's here put endless amount of hours and effort and refining every word in it. And I think everybody on this call that participated, it was a tremendous effort.
Yeah. Graham, what about you? Any comments on step-by-step? How would you respond to the question about there being step-by-step procedures?
Yeah, I concur with Norris and Mark. Because of the ever-changing nature, and because of the unique circumstances of every situation, what's more important to restorers and cleaning firms is the risk assessment, the site safety assessment, and the matrix to identify the risk and how the risk is going to be managed in that situation.
It's still going to happen, right? What we do happens regardless. But
sorry, we got Andy's X on there, and he started talking.
Okay. Hey, Mark, can I add a
yeah,
quick
Mike, I'm
comment
sorry.
there?
Yes, absolutely. Why don't you jump in?
So I've been thinking about this a lot, and to me, it's like a recipe, okay? We provide the basics, and there's 1,000 different variations of how to make chocolate chip cookies, and all of them are good because I love chocolate chip cookies. But at some point, it's not a chocolate chip cookie anymore if you're not following the basic recipe. And that's essentially what we're talking about here, is that we have, in some respects, a guidance document that's the general recipe. And every time someone looks at putting that together, they're going to have to make those adjustments. But it's still, at the end of it, has to look like that, you know, that dish, or else you can't call it restoration for the, you know, for protecting people from the COVID disease.
All right, I think Michelle had a question. I thought I heard her maybe jumping in. Michelle Blevins, did you have a question for one of the panelists?
I do. I have a couple quick questions here. My first one is, if the country does happen to go into quarantine like we are seeing abroad, are you seeing the possibility that restoration contractors can somehow classify themselves as essential businesses to stay open?
That's an excellent question. Brandon, I wanted you to tackle that one because I think that deals specifically with the public service announcement that you guys are crafting, if I'm not mistaken.
I had to unmute myself, sorry about that. So yeah, my understanding would be that the industry would make every effort to classify itself accordingly, because we are an emergency response business, and the scope of the damages on individuals and their livelihood is exacerbated tremendously over time. So if our industry went into a 2 or 3 or 4 week lockdown and no emergency services were provided by, our cleaners and remediators and restoration contractors, the impact that would have on the world itself would be pretty phenomenal. So we would definitely push for that. Now, would there be some impacts on the social distancing and some of the other things that need to occur through the process? Absolutely. Might there be some modifications and things like being out to projects daily to monitor minor things? Absolutely. And all of those things are things that this group will pay attention to. And as we embrace each one of these things that hit us in a pandemic like this, where you just don't know what's next, we'll ensure that we're doing our best to respond and bringing the right information back to this industry to manage.
Excellent. Thank you, Brandon. Michelle, I think you said you had a couple questions.
Yes, I have one more if we have time. So there seems to be a lot of forward momentum from the leaders of today's RIA and the IICRC, with this document being the latest example, the latest product. So why more than ever is it important for contractors to join the RIA? And then from the IICRC side, why is it so important to be pursuing certifications and understanding the standards that are out there for our industry?
I don't think we have. Do we have Kevin Pierre? I'm not sure that Kevin is in, or I'd certainly let Kevin address that. I don't know. I'll address the RIA side, but I'm going to do that immediately after I give first opportunity to respond to that to either Brandon, Graham, or Mark, who want to address IICRC side.
And if you don't mind, I'll take it, Graham and Mark, if you don't mind. So,
sure.
and Mark Springer, feel free to modify any of this the way that you would see fit from the RIA's perspective. But the IICRC has a very different focus in what it serves the industry with than the RIA, and both are very, very critical entities because of the way they come to the industry to support it. The RIA is an association. The IICRC is not an association, and there is a very distinct difference between those two types of entities. The IICRC brings to the industry certification and standards. That's the emphasis. That's the emphasis, the focus that the IICRC brings, and the the arrangement that was entered into and the partnership that was launched between the two organizations, going back several months, is a really great example of that distinction as the ICRC continues to focus its efforts on certification and the RIA continues to focus its efforts on leadership of the industry as an association. So two very, very different endeavors, and I think the more we refine that partnership between the two organizations, the more the rest of the industry will see the clarity in that vision moving forward.
Absolutely. And I just, the only thing I would maybe add to that, and of course I'm in complete agreement, Brandon, with everything that you said, but our industry, if it doesn't have a viable and strong trade association, our industry is wreaked with havoc. And we've seen that. We've seen so many of the things, I call them the existential threats that we face as restorers. We have had such a long period of time where there is not a cohesive voice, and restorers have been impacted negatively in areas that relate to estimating and pricing, with respect to third-party consultants, with respect to third-party administrators, and then also in the areas of government or regulatory representation. And this is a shame that we cannot have voice there. And so through RIA's efforts in the AGA committee that has been led by Cross, that is just an incredible job taking the needs of restorers, taking the positions that have been developed, and then advocating on their behalf. I think now more than ever, it's absolutely critical that folks unite with RIA, and it's really again such an important time, because if we don't do that, I think, and I've said this before, I think our industry will look very, very different if we don't take that opportunity for leadership. And it's kind of on that note, I'd like to close, because we are out of time. I know there's more questions. We could have a long discussion here, and just make one last comment about leadership. I know we have a lot of folks on this call who are leaders. And, it's in these challenging times that we see what we're made out of. It's not that we rise to the occasion when this happens, but it really reveals our character and who we are, and really where we focus our attention and our priorities. So I just want to encourage everyone who's on this call to be very intentional. Be intentional with your teams. Be intentional with your customers, especially in communication. Right now, if we are overcome by fear, and there's a lot of fear out there right now, we don't offer the service that is needed in a very, very desperate time. And so please unite with us. Please get your information. Stay abreast of what's current so that you can lead your team and you can protect your customers at a time that they're needed most. Stay posted. We're going to keep you informed. We're going to continue to release, again, in the partnership that we have with IICRC, information that can help you in your businesses and provide guidance to this industry. Again, I know folks have more questions. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here. We're a resource. Of course, most of us are running our own businesses at the same time, but we very, very deeply want to assist and help wherever we can. On that note, this is, I see in my screen it said Christy Cohen. I'm actually not Christy Cohen. I'm Mark Springer, Dayspring Restoration in Bozeman, Montana. Christy Cohen is our CEO at RIA, and we're so pleased to have her with us. And Christy, I'm sorry that you are going to have to be known as this ugly guy with this place here in Montana. So again, thank you everyone who participated. ICRC guys, thank you. Awesome effort by all. Michael, again, please pass to all the folks on the Environmental Council our profound thanks, and we continue to serve you. Thank you, folks. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.